So this video will be on the Treaty of Versailles and the rise of fascism and specifically Nazism during that time period, and how individualism and fascism is informed by these behaviors and this inability of being held accountable for your actions, along with capitalist rhetoric and individualism that is a key component to capitalism. So first of all, the Treaty of Versailles was a peace settlement that ended World War I and obligated Germany to provide reparations and compromises to the countries that it had hurt and materially damaged during World War I. This peace treaty was signed by the Allied powers of France, the UK, the Soviet Union, or the Russian Empire, and by Germany on June 28, 1919, in the Hall of Mirrors in the Palace of Versailles in France. Further, when Germany failed to make reparations in 1922, France occupied an important industrial area in Germany, resulting in further economic stress. And Germany and France also placed economic sanctions on Germany due to this, and France and England had taken away many of Germany's colonies. So the German public was upset not only about that and materially suffering the consequences of being under economic sanctions, but also they were angry about Section 231 of the treaty, which forced them to admit responsibility for the war. And economic sanctions also starved the population in Germany, including children. So then Hitler began to rise to power in 1919, which was the year when the Nazi Party was founded. And Hitler had promised to overthrow the Treaty of Versailles, make Germany great again, regain conquered territories that France and England had appropriated from Germany, make Germany into a prosperous economic powerhouse, and Hitler also sabotaged restrictions on Germany's military in order to reunite with Austria. So then the Nazi Party, of course, promoted white nationalist German pride and anti-Semitism, racism, along with a disdain for the Treaty of Versailles, and they purposely misbranded the fascist party as the National Socialist German Workers' Party in an attempt as a tactic to deceive communists in Germany to join it in order to assimilate them into Nazism. That one of the first things the Nazis did when they rose to power under Hitler was that they were persecuting communists, raiding communist headquarters, and deceiving communists into becoming Nazis in place of communists. And then from there, of course, it had a covenant establishing the League of Nations, which had its first council meeting on January 16th, 1920. And then the League of Nations and Woodrow Wilson's 14 points served as a foundation for what is now the United Nations, which was established following World War II on October 24th, 1945. Furthermore, I believe that part of why fascism and capitalism is individualist is because people who are capitalists and who follow this rhetoric view collectivism as indicative of individual weakness, that if you operate with others, you can't function independently and therefore are weak. On top of the obvious and how loaded the term weak historically is, that it's informed by social Darwinism, that the strong survive and that the weak inevitably die, and that your strength and survival is informed by how much abuse and exploitation you as a worker, oppressed nationality, woman, LGBT, and any other oppressed group can tolerate under capitalism, imperialism. And then that's obviously racist because that's also implying that colonized peoples are weak because the whites and Europeans colonized them, and that they were the strong ones because they were the conquerors and the ones who made them either die or assimilate into this mainstream Western culture. Misogynistic because it implies that women are weaker than men and that other genders are also weaker than men because they're not masculine, because they're not socialized as being the dominant gender. And those are a few examples of how loaded the term weak is and how individualism is informed by this fear of being branded as being weak or socialized as being a weak member of society. And this is, of course, the excuse or explanation that fascists give and that they believe to be correct when it's actually dogmatic and wrong. And the real reason why is because individualism atomizes suffering and prevents people from understanding their strength and power. Individualism is informed by social Darwinism. It makes people feel they're constantly at odds with the world and that they have to keep fighting to be the strongest and most powerful, which is obtained via capitalist exploitation and elitism. Since capitalism has indoctrinated us into thinking that the more money we have, the more powerful we are, the closer we can come to this white supremacist, racist, classist, patriarchal, cishet normative hierarchy. And the most proximity that we can gain within that hierarchy, the more powerful we will be. And in order to do that, we have to be oppressing people who are rendered as being below that hierarchy and being the lowest as possible in order for us to be seen as more powerful in comparison to them. So individualism is informed by social Darwinism and also by capitalist competition, that competition is the amphetamine of capitalists and of capitalism, that you have to constantly compete with other people in order to get to the top, in order to become part of this elitist class that is called the so-called strongest. And then that's going back to the Treaty of Versailles that I used as an example, which is why I was talking about it, about how the Nazis wanted to take back Germany in order to make it a powerful colonial imperialist and capitalist powerhouse after having been so-called humiliated by the Treaty of Versailles in Article 231 of it, and how fascists view like this defeat as a weakness.